What do you think about the conversation of this being also for the BMF belt? You think that should be on the line?
No, I don't think so. Because the BMF belt isn't like a division, right? Like it was like a one-time, like fun kind of thing. Like
that's true. You don't think they're ever gonna bring it back?
I think they will, but I think it'll almost be like kind of like corny. Like I saw like Daniel Cormier talking about it, and he was like saying like the Jorge Masvidals and like guys like Nate Diaz and stuff.
Yeah,
like
Conor McGregor.
Daniel Cormier was sitting there. He was like I could never fight for the BMF belt. He's like, why would Kamaru Usman, like, he's like sitting up trying to do like Fox commentary and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a pretty good point. But I don't know. It wouldn't be the worst thing ever. It'd be kind of cool, but
it'd be interesting to see who qualifies to challenge for the BMF title. Like, what exactly are the qualifications if they were ever to do it again?
That's like the thing. It's like, are you just gonna make like whatever thug? Like, you know, just like whoever portrays himself like a thug, like
yeah,
about your fighting ability, just like, hey, like put your hands behind your back and then fucking crack someone in the face 3 times, and then you know what? The Rock's gonna come fucking put this belt around your waist if you win your next fight against Nathan Diaz.
It's like the delinquent. It's the delinquent division. They can't trust you around the other fighters to not be like a total dickhead and fight with them in the lobby. Then they put you in the BMF division. And then That'd be
so funny. It's like the BMF belt. It's like Jorge Masvidal in like an orange jumpsuit coming out, like gets taken out of handcuffs right before he gets in the cage.
Yeah, they really lay into that thug angle, and they don't care what anyone says, and they replace the octagon cage for like jail bars.
Yeah, literally just like an octagon jail bars around it. Yeah. Fuck it, one's in an orange jumpsuit, one's in like the old fucking
the
white
stripes. Yeah,
one. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, honestly, that's something I could get behind.
I can get behind that too. Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Throwin Bones MMA podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gerber, and joining me again is my perpetual co-host, Kyle Wheeler. How you doing, baby?
Oh, you know, living the dream. Ready to break down these fights. We got a great fight card this weekend, and I'm excited.
This one's beautiful, actually. So we'll start with the first one. Bit of a story behind this. Do you want to? I think what would be fun for the main event, Masvidal versus Usman, is to not only break down how this is going to go, but sort of compare this with the dynamics of Usman versus Burns and how that was going to go. Because I don't know about you, but I put a lot of thought into Usman versus Burns and how that might play out. And now with this last-minute switch-up, it's okay, because of course I think we've both been thinking for a while of how Masvidal will match with Usman. But I don't think there's any reason to waste perfectly good analysis just because Burns has COVID. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, and I agree because I thought Burns and Usman was super interesting. 2 guys have been training together for so long. Kind of Usman went his own way with Trevor Whitman, and Burns was training with Henry.
Yeah.
And and I was very interested to see kind of how they'd match up in the cage because I thought it was going to be a very even fight. And
to me, it almost had this separate sort of intrigue that was almost more compelling because it was factors from both sides, you know, and I truly didn't know how that fight was going to go, whereas I think I've got a pretty good idea of how Usman stacks up against Masvidal, and to me the storyline of this and the intrigue of this fight almost exclusively comes from Masvidal as sort of this new character, this new star, instead of, like you said, the interaction of moving gyms, Mark Henry working on your striking for the first time. It's got a completely different dynamic to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And do you want to just talk about Burns quickly and get that out of the way? What you're thinking, how the fight was going to play out?
Yeah, let's do that.
Burns, okay.
Let's focus on one. That's a good call. Okay, so I'll go. Do you want me to go first? Do you want to go first there?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. So to me, I thought extremely interesting coming in was, of course, Burns' jiu-jitsu versus Usman's wrestling, and how that was going to impart itself in the fight. Because if we're looking at their most recent and common opponents, both of them essentially had their way with Woodley in the grappling, who we both know is no slouch grappling, and I would argue Woodley's grappling and his wrestling in particular, right now in his career, is sharper than his striking and more reliable. I mean, if you look at the fights where he utilizes his takedown defense and his takedowns effectively, he's got a much higher success rate and much more control of the fight than when he tries to stand and strike with his opponent, right?
Yeah.
So for me, for both of them to go in and be dominant with Woodley on the ground in different ways, Usman with the wrestling and, of course, Burns with much more fluid jiu-jitsu, to me, the interaction of those two things, I was so excited. And for the first time, I think, in any fight he's ever had, I was not going to give Burns the advantage on the ground or against the cage. I think Usman generally and genuinely, I think he's so much bigger and stronger, and he's put so much more thought throughout his entire career on how to put a guy against the fence, keep him there, and then a systematic flow chart, if you will, of his options from there on how to control the fight once he has it there. Whereas I think Burns has, especially after his first couple fights, has relied on his jiu-jitsu as more as like of an escape. If he needs to use it to get out of something or threaten a fighter when he gets taken to the ground, he will. The way he mixed in takedowns against Woodley, I think, would not be as effective against Usman. But then again, we've also never really seen someone test Usman's takedown defense.
Yeah.
Then you bring in the fact that they've been training partners for a long time and have probably had a chance to work these things out. Pretty much everything we could bring up, and this is what makes it so interesting. Every single aspect of this fight that we could bring up where, wow, it's interesting to see how these guys matched up, it wouldn't be the first time with them dealing with that. They would have had repetition time and time again to hone and fix these holes in their game that the other person could exploit.
Yeah.
Then we get to the striking, and I would say by far and away, without a conversation, Gilbert Burns has more impressive striking than Kamaru Usman. I don't even think that could be a discussion, especially with the performances they put on against recent opponents, especially like if you compare the Maya and the Woodley fights that they both had. I don't think, and just looking at them shadow box, like against any opponent, like Burns just has much sharper fundamentals. He has sharper footwork. But he's more liable to like a lack of discipline and going wild and crazy and swinging, which he seems to have reined back lately.
Yeah, he's a lot more fluid in his striking. Like basically, the thing about like the Woodley Usman fight is Usman dominated Woodley.
Yeah,
and it kind of like left the question to go. You can't really beat the champ better than that. You know, it was a great performance. But then Burns came along, you know, right after that, and he beat Woodley like worse. He beat him.
Yeah,
you know,
more
like,
impressively.
It was so impressive, and like you were saying, the way he was striking against Woodley, like he was just having his way with him.
Yeah,
and it was just there's so much volume there, and even when he took him down, it was so easy. Whenever Usman, it was like he slowly like took Woodley's gas tank from him and beat him up over the 5 rounds. But for Burns, it was just constant pressure, and you know, there was no hope for Woodley really.
Yeah, he's really reined back that aggression. Like, if you could say anything about Burns' striking, is that he had an over willingness to chase after and engage with fighters, like too much engagement, and he'd load up on strikes and swing too much, right? When he should have been feeling out the fight and letting the other fighter come to him.
Yeah.
So you can visibly see in his last couple fights since being at welterweight that he's reined that in. You know, check the Dan Hooker knockout. He's literally just chasing after him, swinging bombs, gets caught with a check left hook. Compare that to the most recent Woodley fight. He's reined it in completely. He's technical. He's smart. I got a dog barking in the background. That's all right. Ignore that. And someone's coming home. Here, we'll pause for a quick second and recollect. Anyway, back to it. He's reined his striking in almost completely. Technically, he waits for the right moments, but the willingness to engage, which is so important to have in the first place, and then I think you have to refine it back from there. His willingness to engage is still there, and he goes at every single opening he sees. And the rate that he lands at is incredible, and his ability to pick his shots, whether it's a leg kick, body kick, that check left hook, I think has probably become one of his best shots, or at least it was against Woodley. His ability to whip that check left hook in before his opponent his ability to read that his opponent's about to throw and to whip that check left hook in either over the jab or before the right hand is able to get off from the other fighter is, I honestly can't think of a fighter with a more impressive check left hook right now in the sport.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and the one thing I noticed about him is just like he just smothers you. The way he mixes it up, right? Like,
yeah.
But
in a smart way now. It's not just a charging way. It's a slow, creeping pressure, and he just, wherever you're open, he hits you.
Yeah, and you can tell, he just loves to fight. Like, he wants to get in there, but now he's like, he's thinking about it a bit more and where he's putting his shots. And yeah, it was just such a great performance. It's just, it made for his fight with Usman, like, so interesting because it's like, well, they both beat Woodley so bad. In his last performance, Burns looked, unbeatable.
Well, not only that, but then the missing link between the jiu-jitsu and the striking, his ability to, in the middle of striking, duck under a shot from his opponent and just shoot a perfectly timed takedown. Like, where did that come from? I don't remember seeing him do that in, against Maia or Gunner or anyone at welterweight.
I don't know if it's just because, he knew Woodley, he just has such a power punch, and, Woodley, he had nothing to offer in that fight.
Yeah.
Burns really just beat him so bad everywhere, and he just, he left him with no options. So it was just like Burns would be, beating him standing up. Woodley would swing for the fences. Next thing you know, Burns is on top, and not only that, right when he gets a takedown, he gets the takedown, and then he's in a full mount right away, or he transitions to the next thing right away.
Yeah. And
it was crazy to see because, even in the Usman-Woodley fight, it took time, he lay there for a while, and Burns, it was just constant, passing, changing the position. So
I'm excited to see how that interacts between the two of them too. And so I guess where I was going with that was, in the striking, I would have had Burns hands down. But now that they're in the same camp, Usman's moved to Mark Henry. And as we've seen, Mark Henry working with Garbrandt, I don't think you can go to Mark Henry and become a worse striker. I don't think that's possible, unless you're Claudia Gadelha.
It just cleans it up.
Yeah.
Even in Usman's last fight against Kobe, obviously Kobe's not a striker by any means.
Mm-hmm.
He has volume.
But going into that fight, I thought Kobe would have the striking advantage.
Yeah,
visibly.
The way Usman was using his Muay Thai was nice to see. I've never seen that from Usman, throwing so many knees and, using his kicks so well. And I just never really expected that from him, since he's he comes from a wrestling background, but he really did impress me with his stand-up. So working with a new coach and Mark Henry there is going to be game-changing for him.
It's just that, how long do you have to work with a new coach before it really sets in, right? And especially with Mark Henry, there's all these codes to learn and systems. Is it just going to be more confusing? I think that's a huge X factor. It could be a huge advantage, or it could not do much.
I don't think. At this level, I think it's going to be quite easy for him to pick it up, especially, he's trained with so many people, and I don't think Mark Henry by any means is going to be, trying to dial so many different things into him, but he's just going to clean up the basics with them, which is going to be huge, right? So
So
very, very excited to see him.
Right, and then so how does that stack up against the fight that we're now getting for the main event, Usman versus Masvidal? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is where it gets interesting because, like Burns and Usman, they have a history. They're training partners. They've wrestled together. They've sparred. So it would have made it for, I think, a bit more of a, a more thought out approach to the fight, a bit more of a chess match. But I think what we're going to see with Usman and Jorge here is I don't think we're going to see necessarily too much grappling. I think it's going to be a stand-up fight again. Just based on the fact Jorge's boxing so good. He's one of those guys as well. He can mix it up well. And Usman lately, his striking's been getting better. But I just don't see Usman. I don't think he's going to be able to take Jorge down at will and keep him there. I think Jorge, with his past losses and having, like the loss to Damian Maia, losses to Wonder Boy, that's really what we saw ignite a fire in Jorge. And he came back out and he's like, I'm putting people to sleep. He's like, I can't leave it to the judges. I'm coming to finish you. So I think we're going to see just a lot more of, Jorge just wanted to get in there, put him out, but he's going to have a very thought out approach, and it's going to be an interesting fight.
Interesting. So I think it's going to go almost the opposite way.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a really grapple heavy fight because I think that Masvidal is such a seasoned veteran striker, probably one of the most technical strikers in the UFC. And he has been for a long time, and like you said, now he's just getting more ambitious and more ferocious with it and going after that finish in a more calculated way instead of just... He was a bit of a coaster before. He would just win, and he was satisfied with, you're not really hitting me, I'm controlling the pace, so I'm winning the fight. And he lost a lot of split decisions that way that he probably should have won. That's why he's 35-13, right? I don't think his record really reflects how good he is against some of the elite. So I think, and he's got such a wealth of background knowledge in striking. I think if Usman tries to stand with him and simply strike with him, I think he's going to get absolutely licked up. I don't think it'll be close at all. I think Masvidal will heavily outstrike him, and then what the question will be, how durable is Usman? Because we haven't really seen Usman rocked or stunned very hard for very long, ever in any fight that he's been in. He's a fairly clean fighter, so it's going to be... He seems to have a really good chin. So it's going to be how hard and how often does Masvidal have to hit him. Right? Yeah. And every time that he engages, that's Usman's chance to grab him. And I don't think it necessarily has to be Usman taking him down and controlling him every time. I think for the first 3 rounds, Masvidal is going to be in a real danger of just simply getting grind against the fence and being neutralized. I think that's the classic Usman, At the very least, what he does is smear you against the cage until he can figure out something, more controlling to do. And it's going to... Masvidal, I think, though, has probably been working on this nonstop, anti-wrestling, and it's only gotten better and better. But is it going to be enough? That's the question here, where there's so many questions, I think, in the Usman versus Burns matchup, whereas in this fight, I think there's that one big question. Yeah. There's that one big question.
This is why I think Jorge is going to do so well in the grappling, is because of all the years he spent hanging out with Kobe Covington. He was grappling with Kobe, and he just always... There's so many clips of them even in their old apartment wrestling each other, messing around. And having experience with a guy like that is really going to help him out in this fight. But then also, he was helping Dustin Poirier get ready for the Dan Hooker fight. He was in the gym training before that. I heard Dustin talking about this, and then obviously the fight fell through, the negotiation didn't work out. But he didn't stop training. He had high-level wrestlers flown out. He was training every day, really working on his wrestling and stuff. And I just find it it's one of those situations like you're saying. Yeah, Usman, he's a great grappler. You know, he can get him up against the cage, but as long as Jorge's able to, you know, break free and create distance, he has a really good chance of picking him apart. You know, and getting the job done. I couldn't see Jorge coming out and just like, you know, finishing him right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like whoever wins this fight, it's going to be in the later rounds.
Yeah, it's going to be a grind, I think.
Yeah, it's not just going to be, you know, 5-second run across the knee, flying knee, or, you know, a quick finish. I think this is going to be a war. We're going to see some wrestling. We're going to see, hopefully a good stand-up war, but you never know. Honestly, it's really tough to say.
I personally, I really don't favor Masvidal in this. I really think Usman's going to take this by decision. I think Masvidal is going to have the energy and the output. I mean, not saying that he fades over the course of a 5-round fight. We've never seen that, but we've never truly seen him, like, I wouldn't say that, never truly, I wouldn't word it like that. When he's going to unload on Usman, who we've both agreed has a great chin, right? I think he's going to have the energy to do that within the first 2 to 3 rounds. I think especially, and that's really going to depend on how successful Usman is in pinning him up against the cage. Every time Usman gets him up against that cage, it's going to take, if he can, right? Like we said, that's a big if he can reliably get out of that. When he does, it's going to take a ton of energy out of him. And once he's lost that energy, every shot that he hits Usman with is going to be less likely to knock him out. It's going to be less likely to have that power. So I think this fight for Masvidal is really a race against time unless he can out-cardio Usman by stopping the takedowns, right? Yeah. Which I just genuinely don't see, because Usman doesn't need the takedowns. He just needs to press you up against the fence.
Yeah.
And I don't see how, with someone so much bigger than you, I don't see how you reliably stop that over the course of a 5-round fight. I think this is going to be pretty slow, arduous going. I think Masvidal is going to have a lot more luck on the feet. But I think as far as grappling exchanges goes, this is going to look a lot like Khabib McGregor. I think Masvidal might get up and get off the cage more. I think over the course of the fight, Usman's just going to keep wearing him down and wearing him down and wearing him down until visibly Masvidal's shots aren't doing enough to stop him or keep Usman off of him anymore. And then, you know, from there it's just snowball.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's one of those fights where, like, what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, just how they match up. But that's also why it's such an interesting fight, is just because it's really, like, you know, Burns and Usman, it was a lot more like, well, he has the jiu-jitsu to, you know, kind of match the wrestling. How's that going to come into play? But then with Masvidal, it comes more into, you really focus a lot more on just the striking aspect, and then how Usman's just such a great wrestler. So it's such a hard fight to call, and, you know, it really depends, you know, how is it Masvidal coming in on 6 days' notice? Like, you know, how does the game plan change for Usman?
Right.
Just, there's so many questions, and I can't wait for Saturday to find out.
Yeah, well, and like I said, like the time limit for Masvidal, right? That race against time, that race against gassing out. Coming in on 6 days' notice doesn't help that at all. To me, this is like a really non-favorable scenario for Masvidal going into an unfavorable matchup, and both of those unfavorable scenarios really mix in a horrible way, like as far as I can see for him. And I think that's a lot of the reason why you've heard a lot of him going like, well, I could also just fight Nate Diaz again.
Yeah.
You know, I think he kind of knows that, and I think that's a big reason of why he wanted to get paid so much for this fight. I think he is reasonable enough to understand that this fight could be a huge blow to his star power. And it could be not only because he gets beat, but it could be kind of boring too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, especially if it's, you know, classic, you know, just like stall
Yeah, the cheese grater attack against the fence.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be amazing if Jorge does pull it off.
How about this? How about this? We haven't thought about this at all. Is that... I know we've seen the pictures of that octagon on the beach, right? Are they actually doing that, or are the fights inside?
I'm pretty sure it's like they have something that covers it.
Okay. But it's still going to be hot. It's in Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I'm pretty sure...
Like 40 degrees out.
They're fighting at, like, 8 in the morning, some of them. Like, Alex Volkanovski will be fighting at, like, 8 a.m.
That could still be anywhere from, like, 20 to 30 degrees outside.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah,
think about this. Think about this.
Is,
chain link fence. How hot's that going to get by the main event? And then getting pressed up against that.
They have all those, like, beams. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all this has something that comes around like a tent, and then hopefully they have some air conditioning or something.
Hopefully. I think if, especially if there's sun on it, that fence is going to get hot.
A lot of knockouts.
Yeah. I think if the sun is on it at all, that fence is going to get so hot, and then being pressed up against that fence is probably going to like scorch your back while you're up against it.
Yeah, that might help. That might help Masvidal get off it. Honestly.
Yeah, like a hot poker.
Hey,
ah! Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, we didn't talk about this yet, but as Usman does, he always has to say something funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, he's taken all the risk here, taking the fight on 6 days' notice with Jorge Masvidal. It's mind-blowing to me that he'd say something like that. I can understand it, I guess, because he doesn't even know who Jorge Masvidal is. But yeah, it's just funny. That guy always says something funny, and you know, you've been training the last however many weeks, couple months, and then you know your original opponent falls out. You get Burns, he gets COVID, you get Masvidal, who like originally was gonna fight, and you know it's like a big risk for you. It's just kind of funny. It's like at least you had the training camp, man. And yeah.
How much of a hit is that, by the way? Like the fact that Burns has COVID, right?
Yeah.
Pedro Munoz had COVID. We're going to talk about that later. But then we're talking about ATT. Makes you worry about Masvidal going in. Like Mike Brown, and I think Pedro Munoz was at ATT. Well, Mike Brown and Dean Thomas have both tested positive now. So hopefully that's not a gym outbreak in one of the largest gyms in the United States. And I think most of their roster of fighters have been like filling these cards that have happened. So that'd be horrible. And of course, Dean Thomas was in Dustin Poirier's corner when he fought Hooker. So maybe he got it there, took it back. Jeez, man.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I guess I guess the good thing about having quarantine when you get back, right? Like, you find out you have it, and it's like, well, I have to stay at my house for the next 2 weeks anyway, so you know, at least you get tested right away and find out. And hopefully they didn't go back to the gym or anything like that. That would really suck. But
I just hope to God there's not a gym outbreak.
It's just one of those things. Yeah, it's like, you know, you can't practice social distancing when you're wrestling. You know.
Yeah, right. No kidding. All right, shall we finally move on to the co-main? How long was that? Let's see how long we talked about the main event for. Oh my gosh. Half hour. They're getting a hell of a breakdown this week, Kyle. Hell of a breakdown.
There you guys go.
Okay.
All right, let's move on.
Volkanovski versus Holloway. I don't really like this one either. What do you think? Well, not like it. Like it'll be a great fight, but as far as for our boy,
I want Max to win. I really want Max to win.
Me too, but I don't think it looks good.
Personally, I don't think he's going to win.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Volkanovski, I don't know. He's just such a big guy, like stocky build, and you know he's like a rugby player. I just like those combinations, and
he's really technically sound. Almost single-handedly bringing back the lead leg kick.
Yeah, Yeah, and I don't know. He's just one of those guys, you know, you could hit him with a chair, you could hit him with a frying pan. He's going to keep coming forward.
Which is not good for Max, because Max, I think it's the same reason he's not really going to fare well if he goes up to 155, when people were talking about him moving up to lightweight. A, his arms are quite short for his build, and then B, he just does not have the punching power. He just straight up doesn't. His game is about volume guy. He picks you apart, drowns you, and punches. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like he could get the job done here against Alex with that style. It's just
I didn't see
it. Be careful because you know, I feel like Alex Volkanovski this time. It's not just gonna be him like going for the leg kick. I think he's gonna try and wear out Max a little bit more. Maybe use a little bit more wrestling, a little more grappling, and then mixes striking in along with that.
Yeah, well, already on paper, it's not a great... Like, Volkanovski is essentially the anti-Holloway as far as fighting goes. Like, Max, volume striker, right? Relies on his rhythm manipulation, his adaptability, right? Whereas Volkanovski's great defensively. He's got very good defensive reads, and he's excellent at disrupting people's rhythm. He's great at disrupting momentum, disrupting rhythm, following himself in behind the lead leg kicks. In the last fight, I definitely didn't see the best Max Holloway, and I don't know if he had an off night, if he didn't take Volkanovski seriously, if he was believing his own hype at the time, or if that's just because Volkanovski just shut everything Holloway did down. I didn't see the adaptability from Holloway. I didn't see him switch stances one time, which is like a staple of his game.
Yeah.
So the fight could look a lot different if I saw the Max Holloway that I was expecting come in, but maybe there's things that I didn't see that Volkanovski was doing that shut all that down.
Yeah, I really just think that Volkanovski I feel like after his Frankie Edgar fight, it was a walk in the park, you know. He won every round there. It was simple for him, and then going to fight with like Volkanovski, he was in the passenger seat for once. He wasn't in the driver's seat. So, I just think it's one of those nights where Volkanovski got the better of him, and it kind of it disrupted his rhythm. So it's gonna be. I don't know what to expect in this one at all, to be like with Max and everything.
Well, it's tough because what's changed? Has it been long enough for either of them to have major changes in their game? I don't think so. Like, neither of them have had other fights. And then on top of that, interviews with Max Holloway this week, because of coronavirus and him being in Hawaii and stuff, he couldn't even train with his coaches or anything. Like, he hasn't seen his coaches or nothing for this training camp. Like, he's been completely training himself for this one. So it's like, what exactly is going to be changing for this fight? It's another one where it's like, the more I look at it, situations outside of the cage, matchup inside the cage, coming together, it's the same thing as Masvidal. I'm just like, dude, like, how on earth are you going to do this?
I don't know if I believe the whole Max not having any coaches and only on Zoom. I don't know. Seems. I don't know. I know he's saying that, but why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? I really hope he had some kind of help other than over like a Skype call or a Zoom call, because I know he said he's like not sparring and stuff, but I guess he's just gonna use that Hawaiian fighting spirit and go in there and scrap. But,
yeah, well, didn't work out the first time.
I don't like this strategy of the not coaching or not having coaches.
Yeah, right.
It's tough times right now. It's tough to spar. Have a bunch of training partners, but like you do need a good group of guys.
Right? With some people, it doesn't seem like a true reflection of how they should be preparing for this or normally would, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, that's crazy, right? Max usually has like a great team around him, and so
I think it's going to affect him quite a bit.
But yeah, so who do you got in this fight?
I got Volkanovski in this one. I think it's going to be... I don't know, man. Unless Holloway really had an off night last night and he pulls out a whole bag of new tricks that Volkanovski didn't see the first time. I have a hard time seeing how this isn't a more dominant performance from Volkanovski, if not a finish this time.
Yeah, I see a finish for Volkanovski in this one. I don't know. I just feel like it might just be a 4th round TKO.
Right, because even when it comes to grappling, like Volkanovski can outgrind him. Like he's physically stronger. He's got a better wrestling base.
Yeah.
There's no escape for Max if his volume punching's being disrupted and not doing enough damage. And the other thing is Volkanovski's one of the first people he's fought. I'm about to sneeze 1 second. He's one of the only people that he's fought who have been able to match him cardio-wise. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, easily too.
Yeah, and it's not even close. So, or it's not even close, but it's like Holloway is really significantly, even after the first round, you can see he keeps his cardio much better than everyone he fights, other than Volkanovski, who's a cardio machine. So he's the anti-Holloway in so many ways. And then on top of that, you didn't really have a real training camp. And on top of that, he just beat you a couple months ago, and you guys haven't had any fights in between. And if you lose a fight like that, you almost never win the immediate rematch, especially if they happen so close together. So,
yeah, I didn't really have any time to really change too much. So,
yeah. So all you are is starting in pretty much round 6 from the last fight, where it's like he's just figured you out.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, and yeah, it's crazy too because it's like Volkanovski 21-1, Max is 21-5.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great fight. It was a great fight last time. All right, let's move on to the bantamweight championship. I'm doing air quotes for the audience that can't see me, between Peter Yan and Jose Aldo. So, how much of a crock of shit is this?
Well, Jose Aldo truly deserves it after his last loss.
Yeah, his one and only fight in the bantamweight division.
Yeah, which is a loss. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, over all the other guys. Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it, though. I mean, when you're the champ for so long and then you just have it taken away the way he did, and then, you got to give him so many opportunities to get it back because he's a legend, but I'm just kidding.
I was like,
got himself in this prediction. It's like they're paying him back for the McGregor fight. I don't get why they want Jose to have the belt so bad. That's it.
Yeah, where was you wanting him to challenge for the belt after he got starched by McGregor? Like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly. Like, where was the rematch then?
Exactly. God damn.
The most upsetting thing about this for me is he's fighting Peter Yan, who's a great fighter. Like, obviously, he's going to be a champ eventually. But I just don't know if this is going to be the night for him to become the champ.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this is going to be his toughest fight, and I think it couldn't be a more interesting matchup.
Yeah.
Especially, like, striking-wise. This is going to be a hell of a kickboxing match.
Well, because, and, like, the thing is, too, right, is, like, imagine this fight at welterweight. Or, I mean, not welterweight, at featherweight. It's like there's no question it would be Aldo all day.
Yeah.
Obviously, Yan's never fought at featherweight. But,
and he's a good-sized bantamweight.
Yeah, but, like, so it really makes it interesting that it's at bantamweight. But just, like, the experience and the level of striking Jose Aldo has, he's great everywhere, jiu-jitsu and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Great wrestling defense. But his striking is phenomenal. I think it's really going to be an interesting fight, and it's going to be a very tough fight for Peter.
Do you think we're going to see a different Jose Aldo than we've seen in his last couple fights?
I think we're going to see him look a bit better at 135 this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, since he's made the weight now, and he's had a lot of time to, diet and hopefully get his weight down as low as possible, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think we're gonna see kind of like a more redefined, new but an old Aldo. You know, we're gonna see him go back to those leg kicks and work the body. Yeah, I think we're in for a treat with this one, and I honestly just don't see Peter Yan pulling it off.
I see him. I see him pulling it off in one way, and I think he might do it because Jose Aldo. We saw a really different Jose Aldo when he was fighting in championship fights. He was a lot less active. He was more defensively minded, and he was willing to coast to conserve his energy, and he's been open about that. And he's also been open about now that he wasn't fighting in championship fights and only fighting in 3-round fights, he was being a lot more active, opening up a lot more, and not worrying about gassing so much. And with this being his first 5-round fight at bantamweight, cutting to bantamweight during coronavirus, I think that might have a really big effect on him, like cardio-wise, and going 5 rounds. And I think he might come into the fight with that knowledge, and I think we might see a really, really reserved Aldo. And if we see that, I think Yan might be able to set the pace on him, and he might be able to take this. But if we see 3-round Aldo come out and he comes out banging, I agree with you. I think he's got a great chance of clipping Yan and putting him away, because Yan is going to be there to fight. But if we see the Aldo that comes out, sits back, relies on his defensive boxing, waits to explode, and lets Yan dictate the pace and tries to react to that pace, I think we're going to see sort of a Holloway versus Aldo part 2, and I think Yan's going to pick him apart and outpace him.
Yeah. See, yeah, I disagree here, just because I really think, even though with everything going on with Corona and everything, I think it just gave him more time to get the weight, focus on his diet, get as close to 135 as he can naturally, and then cut the rest, whatever he needs to do. Just like the last couple pounds. That's what I'm hoping. I think he's going to have cardio, and I think he's just going to be more used to his frame at the 135 division. And I just think about, Peter's great and everything, but, even comparing, like, Peter's fight with, like Uriah Faber, you can't really go from Uriah Faber to Jose Aldo. They're two different animals, so
I guess that Jan's just been so dominant, and I think he's shown like a level of technical ability where he can hang.
He can hang
at the
with the top.
level.
Yeah, and this is definitely the toughest challenge for sure.
Yeah.
For him. But yeah, unfortunately for him, I think Jose's experience is gonna really play a big part in this one.
Yeah. This is a great fight. This is probably, and it's like, I think we crapped on it a little at the beginning because it's for the bantamweight championship, and it really shouldn't be. But this is a great fight. Like, this is, as a fight, this is fantastic.
Matchup.
Yeah.
It's just odd how he gets the title fight after.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the way it goes when you're a legend.
All right. Well, I'm excited to break this card down now, because we both had extremely different opinions on that fight.
Yeah. Well, I'm going Jose Aldo with the decision here.
With a decision? Oh boy. Okay. I see. If I was going Aldo, I'd go like TKO round 2. TKO. Yeah, something like round 2, round 3.
Third round TKO, but I could see him taking a decision in this one. I'm
gonna go with like a round 4 or round 5 TKO for Peter Yan. I was gonna go with the decision, but now that you said that, I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna go late round 4 or like round 5 TKO for Peter Yan.
Nice. All right. I can't wait to talk about it.
That's gonna be great. Okay. Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas 2. Will your heart be able to take watching Rose get slammed on her head again, if that happens?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
No, I'm just kidding. This is the theme of the night. I have no idea, man. This is such a tough fight to call.
I've wanted to see this rematch since the first one.
Yeah, because in the last fight, it was like Rose came out. She looked so good.
So good.
Like
cracking her. Laser beam punches.
Her apart, and then all of a sudden...
And Andrade is getting tired. Not only was Andrade getting tired, bloodied, and stung over and over again. Like, it just looked like it was so downhill. I literally said to myself, we were watching it, and Rose, it was like going out of round 2 or round 1. I can't remember how long the fight went. But Rose put on like the performance of her life, and I turned to everyone in the room, and I was like, nobody's going to beat this chick for a long time. And turns out that long time was like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. No, yeah. I remember just because everyone was cheering for Rose. There was even that one chick. She was like, "I'm such a Rose fan" and stuff.
Yeah.
And then just like a couple minutes later, just one of the most like gruesome knockouts I've ever seen. Just out of nowhere, Dominic Cruz is like,
she can't slam.
As long as she just holds on, Andrade can't do nothing from here, and then just picks her up and drops her on her head. Vicious.
And then since then, Andrade has run into Weili Zhang and gotten knocked out, and Namajunas has just kind of rehabilitated. And it's sort of a similar immediate rematch scenario that we had with Holloway, except I still favor Namajunas in this.
Yeah, I'm going with Namajunas in this one too, just because she looked like Andrade had no chance in that last one. It looked like
until like just one split moment of getting slammed on your head, and I wouldn't bet on that happening again.
Yeah, exactly. So, the thing about Andrade is though she is like the Mike Tyson in that division. She definitely has the knockout power as well. So,
and I think a big X factor with this is how Namajunas is going to come into this fight mentally.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be odd because she has been open too, about how she's struggled, like, even with the McGregor bus incident. And
yeah, well, I don't even think in that way. I wouldn't even say she's sort of mentally vulnerable in that way. It's just that, coming back during coronavirus can't be a good thing, right? That can't be a normal mental situation for anybody. I think that's going to weigh on everyone probably equally, right?
Hold on a sec, though, but the thing is, so if coming back during the whole coronavirus thing is going to be affecting her mentally, how will standing across the octagon from the person who knocked her out affect her mentally?
Exactly, right? So I think that's what I was sort of getting at. Everyone's feeling this coronavirus thing, right? So any stress that you pile on top of that is going to be more of a stressor than it usually would be, right?
Yeah.
So it would, like you said, great. Like that question of how is she going to be back against Andrade when you got slammed like that, so iconically, so violently, and so suddenly, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to mentally deal with that on top of what you've had to go through to get to this fight, right? That was already going to be a question, and now it's exacerbated by this. Yeah.
There's so much. Like, I'd really like to kind of hear like what's worse. Like, what's her headspace right now?
Yeah.
Just because, it'd be tough, especially like getting...
Well, she was talking about retirement, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially getting like finished in that way, right? Like, you're doing so well, and then all of a sudden you just get slammed on your head and it's over. It's quite a devastating way to lose the belt, and there's so many questions there, right? Because we haven't seen her in so long. So.
Mm-hmm. And Andrade, like, how is she going to come back from the Zhang knockout? Is she going to come back and be a lot more measured? Because if she's going to fight a lot more smart, that's going to be an even harder fight for Namajunas. Because she had obviously figured out how to deal with the just, like, bull rushing strategy.
Yeah. Because, she does kind of she just walks people down, basically.
Yeah.
Stalks them. But, oh man. So you have Namajunas in this fight, eh?
I think I do, yeah. I think her cardio is going to hold out better. And I think she's not going to get slammed again. And I don't think she's necessarily going to lose any of that defensive striking movement that she was employing in the first fight. I think it's just going to be more of a... Is she or is she not going to have the same sort of mental slip that she had last time of just hanging on to that submission and getting slammed on her head?
Yeah.
I think that's the question.
Yeah. It's could you imagine if Jessica Andrade slam knocked her out just twice in a row?
Oh, it'd be just like she becomes the new Cody Garbrandt, where she just gets slam knockout every time, like the same slam knockout.
It's like, wow, it's like just no luck, just no luck.
No luck at all.
Yeah, this is a good matchup. Once again, I'm gonna go with Rose in this one. I can't wait for this fight though, just because there's so many unanswered questions from last time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and it's less about the technical and more about the mental, really, for both of them. Like, how is Amanda going to come in after getting starched? Or it's not Amanda, Andrade. How's she going to come in after getting starched? And how's Namajunas going to come back after having that mental lapse? Having this, daunting task in front of her, coming back through all these circumstances. Is she going to have that slip again? Because all you need is that one moment of slipping against Andrade and your lights are out, obviously. Yeah. So this is another great dynamic to this fight. And, a rematch to me that's sort of enriched from the first one. Even though it's kind of an immediate rematch for Rose, it's still been long enough.
Yeah. And
there's enough questions to still be asked, unlike Volkanovski versus Holloway.
Agreed.
And then we got Paige Van Zandt versus Amanda Ribas.
Oh, man, I can't wait for this one.
Yeah, I think Ribas is going to whoop some ass.
Yeah, I think Ribas is... Yeah, obviously, I've got Ribas here.
Yeah, I don't even think it's going to be close.
Excited to see Paige get in that octagon.
Yeah, famous Instagram model, Paige Van Zandt.
Yeah, exactly.
Will be fighting in the UFC.
She's fighting in the UFC for... I don't know, she has no luck, eh? She'll have a fight and then she'll get injured.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think she'll break her arm again in this fight for the 8th time in the last 2 months?
Great chance.
Big chance, yeah.
Great chance, yeah. I think Ribas here for sure. She's just the more active fighter. She's really impressive.
I just think she's genuinely very talented too.
Yeah. She's really fun too. I love when that girl wins. She's been calling for Paige for a while, and this should be a good matchup. But then again, too, Paige Van Zandt too. She can't surprise you. I will say that. I know Ribas is a different animal, but I thought no way she'd beat Rachel Ostovich, honestly. So that impressed me. But Amanda Ribas is a completely different level.
Oh, yeah. I think it's just going to be completely outmatched on the feet, on the ground, wherever it is. Especially on the ground. I think if Ribas gets her down, it might be a decision. Or it might be a submission, sorry.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing Ribas Amanda Ribas post-fight interview. I'm really looking forward to that.
Because there's going to be one.
Yeah, the female Yoel Romero.
Love
it's
it.
so funny, man.
I love it.
I'm going to go with the TKO, honestly, in this one for Ribas. Second round.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's a nice little prediction there. I'll probably go with a decision or submission. I don't know if she'll... It's a TKO, but...
Yeah, fair enough.
Volkan Oezdemir versus Yuri Prochka. We did a little... I enlightened you on Yuri Prochka before we started the podcast.
Yeah.
You go ahead, sir.
Yeah, he looks like an impressive fighter. He's a big guy, very athletic. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him get in there with Volkan Oezdemir, because Oezdemir, he's had that experience in the UFC. He's fought for the title. He's had some big losses, so he quite and he's looked better since the losses. So
yeah, I think it's going to be hectic first round, very hectic first round. I think Prochka's going to come out there like a bat out of hell. He's mainly a striker, and he goes absolutely wild and just throws haymaker after haymaker. Very, very solid hitter, power puncher for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if this turned into a slugfest really quickly. But I also think that Oezdemir has more experience. He's going to be able to slow down the pace of the fight. I think he's going to be able to sort of break it down technically, catch Prochka coming in, dissuade him from attacking so much, and then just take over the kickboxing from range from there, because he's a very good range kickboxer.
All right.
So I got Ozdemir in this one for sure, but this will be a really entertaining fight, I think.
Good, yeah. Yeah, just honestly knowing Ozdemir, I don't know the other guy. I would go on Ozdemir based on that, but it sounds like he's got the potential to knock anybody out if he catches them. So,
but yeah, I'm excited to see.
This guy.
I'm really excited to see Prajka start developing in the UFC once he starts facing these higher level opponents. Like, I'm excited. I think he's going to lose this fight, but I'm excited to see how he adapts to this loss afterwards, because like being the champion of Ryzen for so long, the light heavyweight champion of Ryzen, I think he's really stopped improving his game drastically with each fight, because he hasn't really had to. I think he's gone from fighting Fabio Maldonado to fighting CB Holloway, which isn't exactly like a list of killers. It's great names, first round knockouts. Like, obviously this is a guy to be taken seriously, but I think how he responds to this fight, how he adapts in the fight, I don't think his first game plan of how to deal with this fight, I don't think it's going to work out. So how he adapts to that mid-fight, and then how he comes back in the next one, I think it's going to be really exciting to watch the career of this guy in the UFC now that he's here.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it. Sounds like an up-and-coming prospect.
Oh, yeah. And then we got, I think, the last fight where we'll really talk about the matchup between two people instead of just mentioning guys on the card is Easy Dos Santos and Muslim Salikov. So we got Captain Capoeira with the crazy kicks versus the King of Kung Fu.
Yeah. And I got Captain Capoeira in this one for sure.
Really? I think I might have to take Salikov in this.
Really?
I think he might outstrike him.
Yeah.
He might not outstrike him. I think the striking will be close, but I think Salikov, if he takes it to the ground,
has the advantage.
I think so, yeah. He's got that Dagestani wrestling background.
Yeah. Just in Dos Santos' last fight there against Kunchenko.
Yeah.
He just really impressed me in that fight. Just like Kunchenko, he's a really strong Russian fighter. I was pretty high on him, and like seeing Dos Santos and stuff, I didn't think he'd be able to get through him, but he handled him pretty well. And it was an awesome fight. So I just think he's gonna keep the streak going and put him away.
I was just really disappointed by his performance against Li Jingliang. And I guess that's sort of lingering in my mind more than the comeback win against Kunchenko.
That's true. It's funny. See, I didn't see that one, so that might be another reason why. Did he get finished in that? Did he get up by Jingli?
I think he did, yeah. Let me check real quick. I believe it was a TKO. Was it a decision? Yeah, he got knocked out punches.
Yeah, round 3.
So I don't know. I think if Jingliang can catch you and knock you out, Muslim Salikov definitely has that overhand right. But you know what? It's closer. The more I think about it, the less sure I am that Salikov has this.
Yeah,
I think this might end up being one of the more entertaining fights on the card.
Yeah, I think this fight will be a decision, honestly.
Yeah, just a back and forth.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a good matchup.
I don't know. I think someone might get caught.
Yeah.
There can be some spinning shit, that's for sure. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going decision. DeSantos decision.
I'll go Salikov decision then, even though now you've kind of swayed me. I honestly think Zaleski's going to win, but I'll go against you just for the sake of
sounds good.
Banter. Yeah, banter in the next episode. All right, and then we got Makwan Amirkami coming back from getting tortured against Shane Burgos. He's going to fight Danny Henry. Of course, Danny Henry beat Hakeem Dawodu, so at Throwin Bones MMA, we always want Danny Henry to lose. So that's how that fight's going to look.
Yeah.
And I think Amir Khan is a huge step up for him that he's not ready for.
Yeah, I think so too. I think just his experience in the UFC is just going to show on Saturday, and yeah, I think he's going to win the fight.
And then we got Leonardo Santos against Roman Bogatov, and I'm just excited to see Leonardo Santos in there again. Really exciting guy. We got Marcin Tybura versus Maxim Grishin. Hopefully that's not a boring heavyweight fight.
I think Tybura is going to win, to be honest with you.
You think so? I don't really know Grisham that well. I think this is his debut.
That's exactly why I think Tybura is going to win. I've never heard of the guy, and I just know Tybura has just had a rough run in the UFC, but he's been able to come back. So
yeah, and he had a good showing against Verdum.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all on the card that we're really going to get to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Do you want to talk about Pedro Munoz versus Frankie Edgar getting canceled?
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think right now what's happening is Munoz tested positive for COVID before he flew, and they're looking at either Ricky Simone and Chito Vera. Marlon Chito Vera are both in Abu Dhabi right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully looking to fill in against Frankie Edgar. So who would you prefer there?
I would like to see Chito Vera, honestly.
I would too. I think I'll put it out there. I think he got robbed against Song Yadong. I think he should have won that fight.
Yeah.
And I think he should be, I think this is a great opportunity for him to fight up in the rankings. I'd like to see him get it. I think stylistically, that fight would be more interesting than Simone versus Edgar. But I also think that they're probably going to give it to Simone just because Simone is there as a corner man. He's gone through, I don't think Chito Vera is there as a corner man. So Simone's gone through all the testing and protocols already that a fighter would have to go through as a cornerman. So I think he's probably a more likely scenario.
Yeah. I think Chito is there, though, because I think no matter what, if you're there, you have to go through the testing process, right? So I think no matter what, even if you're there as like the training partner for one of the guys, I think you need the testing, right?
I haven't found out yet if he's there for, because I don't know, I don't see any Jason Perillo fighters
that he'd be there
on the card. Yeah,
that's odd. Yeah, I don't know.
He might just be there.
To be honest, it works out. I think that for Chito Vera, that would be a very good matchup for him with Frankie Edgar. It's a big name, but I think he has a pretty good shot at sweeping in and getting the win. So
yeah, and Ricky Simone, I think is just kind of like a worse Frankie Edgar. Like if you got knocked out against Uriah Faber, Frankie Edgar's gonna have his way with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in his last fight, it wasn't anything that showed you that, this guy's gonna.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's not going to be able to just out wrestle Frankie Edgar if he's having trouble with Ray Borg, right?
But I guess I guess it is Frankie's first time at 135, so.
Also true. We're going to see how he holds up. Same discussion with Aldo. How's that gas tank going to hold up if he fights?
Yeah.
If he fights.
Yeah. No, exactly.
All right.
So, yeah.
That was sweet.
Fun fights. It's a good time being an MMA fan.
Sure is. Thank you for breaking down the card with me, and
my pleasure.
Hopefully, talk to you next week. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely.
Beauty. All right. Well, this has
been
been
in your face. I'll be like, man, come on, you got to get some better predictions.
There you go.
I told you so.
We should start keeping track of how many each of us get right. We can just tally it over the year.
Yeah, let's do it.
Next year we'll start it. 2021, a whole new year.
Sounds good.
All right. Well.
All right.
Hell yeah, buddy. Can't wait for these.
Yeah,
thank everyone for joining us. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Like us on Facebook. All that jazz. Recommend us to a friend who's in MMA or who needs to be educated on MMA. There you go. This has been the Throwin Bones. This has been the Throwin Bones MMA podcast.
Thanks for listening.
We're out.
Have a good one.